Seeing a website that actually works is very rewarding, especially for me trying to record these videos. But the truth is that during development, what you mostly see is partially working websites, and you need to debug them. And debugging a website that uses Ajax and dynamic JavaScript is actually hard, because you have many things going on at the same time. You have some JavaScript active in the browser, some network communication between the browser and the server, and other code running in the server. And so whenever you look for an error, it can be in one of various places. So what I want to do here is show you how to debug websites. So I will be introducing errors and show you how I go around to finding them. So here I have an error somewhere. I load my website and I see exactly nothing. So what do you do in this case? Well, you start by inspecting, and when inspect, you should always look at the console, because if there is a big blocker error, it's gonna be displayed there. Oh wow, error compiling template. This means essentially that I have a syntax error in my template. Templates should only be responsible for yada yada, and it gives you this complicated message that you don't know what to do with. Ugh, what is going on? The problem is that most unfortunately I have to say, but the code that reads the template and that reads the HTML is not incredibly smart. The smallest syntax error, the smallest thing missing from a closed quote to a closed element, throws it into conniptions, and then it loses its mind and it throws these completely horrible errors. So unfortunately, look at it, I mean, it's just horrible. And there is maybe some indication of it, no, not even here. So yes, there is no, I mean, you really wonder, why didn't these people include a better tracker of syntax errors? It's a common defect of people who design naively programming languages, such as this templating language, that they put a lot of their efforts into compiling correct templates and not really enough efforts into giving good diagnostics when there is an error. So they leave you a bit, short-charged here. So then you have to look, maybe the most useful thing is actually to look at it in PyCharm or in some other editor that is HTML aware. And in this case, the error was simply that this thing here was missing. I knew it because I removed it. But if it was you, well, it could have been halved. So look for hints in the sidebar. But the message is always look at the console first, because if you have funny stuff happening, let's see what happens if I remove this close tag. Okay, this is an error, and it's signaled at the very end of it. You see, the problem is that in this scoping, if you remove an end tag, the tool will probably believe that there is this one. That there is a need for one extra here, or maybe at the end of the whole thing. So let's see what happens if this was the error. I reload. Oh, and again everything is broken. So you see, it's incredibly sensitive to errors in the templating, unfortunately, Vue.js. This is not quite true of normal HTML, because people write web pages that contain a lot of errors. Normally when you load a web page, the web page parser per se is quite tolerant to all kinds of errors. It tries actually to interpret and to fix them in sort of the best way, just because so many web pages out there are broken. There is a wonderful story of when Google Chrome was being developed, that they had this, it is easy enough to write a browser, well, it's not easy, but it's one thing to write a browser that is correct on correct pages. It's quite another to write a browser that behaves in a reasonable way on the enormous amount of broken pages that are out there on the web. So they did a testing for Google Chrome in which they actually tried to make it match behavior of known browsers when they were developing it. In this case, instead, this is extremely sensitive to missing things. So you have to be quite careful when you write the template, and you have to always look at the console for hints of errors, right? So now I fixed it and it should work again. Okay, so let me inject another type of error. Okay, so I reloaded the page and nothing happens. So what do? Well, inspect the element always and look at the console. Uncaught reference errors, Baraquack is not defined. And it gives you a pointer to the code. So here you can actually look at the code and say, hey, what is this? Maybe I was typing a password. Well, you can try it. But so you look here and you remove the culprit line. Notice that a small and easy thing, a small and easy thing if I still had my window. Where did it go? It ran away on the other screen. Hey, here it is. So a small and thing, as I was saying, here, if you click here, it shows you the code. You can actually modify it here, I think. Or you may not. No. In this case, not. Sometimes you are able to edit it here. But remember that even if you edit it here, this is just what was loaded from the server. So when you reload the code next, it would still appear here. Okay. There are some ways in which you can actually edit this code here in order for doing testing, but the danger is when you reload, everything is lost. So the proper place where to edit it is of course on the server, so that the next time you will give out the corrected code. Okay, so if I fix this error, this works again. Now let me try to introduce a subtler error. So let us try to track down another problem. Here the site seems to work. I want to edit this. Instead of Charles I put Giuseppe, typical Italian name. I click elsewhere and, well, nothing happens. I look at the console, first thing to do, nothing. So this is an example of a super annoying problem. So if you don't break anything and nothing happens, it's actually harder to find the problem. Because if something happens, you can look at why that happened. But if nothing happens, it's kind of difficult to know where to look, right? So let's think of the chain of events. When I click elsewhere, there should be in the code, we have seen it, right? There should be this blur event that causes a call to stop edit. So the first thing you should always do when you see nothing happening is you need to check whether the event handler is being called. So how do you do that? Well, in this way, you go back to the browser window, okay, and you need to go into the debugger. The debugger can show you all the possible lines of code that are there. And in index.js, you see this stop edit controller, you can include a breakpoint. So let's put a breakpoint there, and this will stop the execution of the JavaScript if that place is ever reached. Because your first question is, do I even get there? And the second question is, if I do get there, why do I not run this code that does the server call? Right? So let's look at it. Now I can do this. I can create the blur again. I can decreate the blur. I do actually go there. And so here you have various controls in the debugger. Okay, let me just make this window a little bit larger so that we have more space. And this shows you also the value of all the variables and lets you step over or into an expression. So let me step over this let. And this also shows us the values of the variables somewhere here, okay? Fn is the first name, row index is equal to 2, row is equal to this thing here. Because now I am at this if then else, right? Row has a state which is, it doesn't want to tell me, right? It's a first name that maps to edit and a last name that maps to clean. And now, you know, this if, I would expect it to go through and enter the line after. And if I click here to step over, right? Oops, this goes to the end. And now I need to do a small mental jump and figure out, well, it goes to the end because if I look at the variable again, The problem is that let is not defined, so it's a bit annoying. Maybe I should have reproduced the error again. In that case, I want to run it. Okay, then you click and you declick again. You move. And you now stare at this if with more attention, because you know that the problem is here. And the problem is that if you look at the row carefully, the state has, sorry for these many clicks, a first name which is in state edit. But here I'm comparing with edit with a space added in front. So this was the error. But essentially you have a debugger and you have the option of adding breakpoints. Okay, so when you see that nothing happens when you take an action, your first check should always be, is the handler called, and if so, what does the handler do? And you see that you have a quite a handy debugger that enables you to set a breakpoint in the event handler, and it enables you to step through the code line by line, and you can observe the change of values of the variables. So let me try to fix this error. Okay, so now I go here in index.js. I realize, oh yes, I had this extra space, how silly of me. I remove it, I save. Now I reload the page. Well, first I finish running this, okay? But I reload the page and I click on Charles, change it in Giuseppe. Okay? Then I look at this page. You see, the debugger is smart enough that when you reload the JavaScript, it does the best possible job of re-putting the breakpoint in the new code in the corresponding position of where it used to be. So now that you are here, we are at the breakpoint, and we can single step through it. Okay, so this then actually the if will be taken, the change will be, the state will be changed to pending. Okay, so that well, if we could see, which we can't, because it doesn't want to show us, unfortunately, we could see that the spinner is spinning, and then we do the access post. Okay, and so we do the access post. And this actually, you know, finishes, because the actual access post returns on its own will, right? So, and we finish essentially. So we can, okay, and this has terminated as well. To another disaster. So let me put this Giuseppe back to Charlie. Charlie, click. Nothing happens. Why? So if nothing happens here, well, of course you need to look at the console first thing, but the error can be anywhere, right? It could be in the JavaScript, it could be in the network, or it could be in the server. So let's look at it a moment. Inspect. We go to the console. Uncaught promise error. Request failed with the status code 404. Ah, what does this mean? And then it tells us this funny message. But an error 404 means a page not found. So we can also look at the network tab, and we see nothing, because, you know, very helpfully, it doesn't start recording before I start inspection. So I need to reload, try again. Charlie. Charlie is the name of a mouse inhabiting my daughter's dorm room. So no reference to Charlie Brown. So post 404. Not found. Okay, great. Why? Edit contact. Why not found? What is this? Oh, I find it also in the server logs. It's a 404. Why? And then you need to essentially be careful and say that this is edit contact, right? And it's not contact. Okay, so this is an example of what happens when you do a request to a page that does not exist. Okay, so onwards to another type of error. So to fix this, I need to fix, reload Python web, and reload here as well. Hopefully it's fixed now, so I can really change this to Charlie. Yes. To another problem. So Charlie Brown, I can say Charlie, I don't know, beige. Okay, now I save it. Why does this spin forever? Internal server error. Uncaught promise due to the state of internal server error. Then you need to look at your server. Okay. Update. Keywords must be strings. And you may go crazy for a while looking for the error, because you wonder why a keyword does need to be a string. And so a good way to debug these, if you really fail, unfortunately it doesn't quite work to put a breakpoint in PyCharm. This is unfortunate, I couldn't get this to work. So I have to debug the good old way using prints. And so I say print id field value, because it tells me the keyword must be a string, and I say, why on earth are these not strings? In fact, I want to print them, and I also want to give a look at the request. Okay, because this post request, I can look at the request itself, and so to me it seems perfect. The field is last name 3 beige. Why not? Why does this break? So I have added this debug print to the server. I can now restart the server, and I need to reload this page. Well, I don't need to, but I want to reload this page. I change this into a beige. This triggers the error again. This triggers the error again. And it printed out none, none, none. Why are ID, field, and value none? And then unfortunately you need to switch on the brain and think and figure out. And why? I mean, I sent them. Why are these not received? And the error is that you wrote request params instead of request JSON. This is an error I actually made while I was developing the lecture. Okay, so you have to fix it this way. Okay, and so there are many other subtle errors, but to recap, when you find an error, the general procedure is this one. You need to check the console. You need to then you may find indications in the console. If you see that nothing is happening, you need to move on to the debugger and try to add breakpoints. If you see that something is happening, you check the network tab, you look at your requests, okay, you check that they make sense. In this case, they don't have a response, because the response is an error 500, okay? And then, once you see that the requests are correct, then you move on to the server, where you try to debug the issue. Okay, so that's a general procedure for debugging.